What was your reaction when you heard the news that this bill got passed?
It wasn't surprising. I mean, I think the momentum had been building for a while, and with the majority members in both the House and the Senate, it wasn't particularly surprising.
Any concerns for how this might impact the Sioux City Community School District?
Well, sure. I think, as we communicated earlier, next year it won't have that much impact, but when you start talking about pulling $340, $350 million from the public schools in Iowa, it definitely will have an impact on Sioux City.
Well, and that's a problem going forward. It's kind of open-ended after the first 2 years or so. So would there be concerns going forward as far as how much funding will be available? Because budgets are strange things, as you well know, from year to year. You never know what's going to come up.
Well, in the projections that were presented for this whole proposal, they're projecting roughly 4.2% increase in revenue on an annual basis for the next 5 to 7 years. That's a very, very aggressive revenue growth every year, year after year. Now, in their analysis, they took it down to 3.5%, but still, that's a pretty aggressive growth in state revenue with tax cuts and other things that are going on right now. So, I don't think there's a guarantee on state revenues. And therefore, there's not going to be a guarantee on funding to the schools when we have this new mandate now that's been passed or will be passed that we have to fund public schools or private schools. That total pie, if it goes down, we're going to get a significant amount less when the private schools are getting the increased revenue. So yes, it's a concern for us, not for next year, but for years thereafter, particularly when it's fully implemented after 3 years. I think it's a potential problem for public schools, a significant problem.
Yeah, and plus there's all this pressure to reduce taxes, and I know the district compared to the city and the county, the property tax asking isn't as big, but if it comes down to that point again, budget-wise, not knowing necessarily what will happen in 3 years plus, property taxes are always an issue.
Well, historically, or what's currently happening is the state funds 87.5% of the school's budget. That means the other portion is borne by local taxpayers. Should the state lower that funding, we're going to need funds to run the schools, and that necessarily will probably be increased taxes if the state allows that. So we don't know where it's going to be. I think there's a lot in flux right now, but I think the key thing for us is, look, it's going to pass. We know that. The key thing for us is how do we manage things going forward, and to make sure there's no more what I call burdens placed upon public schools. In other words, with this $1,205 for categorical administration, is that going to be something that the state is going to say that the public schools have to manage the categorical activities of the private schools? And we don't even know that yet. But typically, if there's dollars sent, there's going to be a string attached from the state. And that's what we're worried about, is they're going to subsequently place a burden on the public schools to manage and monitor private schools' activities, particularly for the categorical activities such as special ed, such as Title I, other tag programs, anything like that, ELL programs. Are they going to expect us to fund those with that $1,205? And I think that's where we need to get answers from our legislators right now. Is that something that's the unspoken right now, or is that going to be a sneak attack on public schools again?
So the district regularly holds legislative discussion sessions with the local representatives. Has this been a topic that's been discussed during those recent sessions?
We had one, it was in December, and now we're having another one on Saturday, but clearly school funding and vouchers and ESAs were discussed at the last one. Look, I think the fact of the matter is it's passed both the House and the Senate. The governor's going to sign it. That deal is over. What I don't want to happen is additional mandates put on the schools that public schools have to provide teachers down at private schools or administrators down at private schools, which I think there's a high likelihood that's going to be the next approach, and particularly with that $1,205. So we are worried about that piece.
Do you have any projections on have you done any modeling projections, guesstimates on how many students might leave Sioux City to go to other institutions?
I can only guess of what the state has said, so whatever their projections are is what we're using. We don't have anything better than that at the current time.
Anything else?
No, that's easy.
That was real easy. So I know you can't comment specifically about the two lawsuits, but any court dates set, anything pending or any hearing scheduled?
No, we generally don't comment. I think we feel the district's in a good position, and we're confident we'll put up a vigorous defense.
Oh, I had one. You know, the district having a lot of, high, low-income students, poverty students, does it make it a harder burden, you think, make it tougher on a district like Sioux City schools with that, fearing losing those funds?
Well, I mean, we have roughly 2/3 of our students are free and reduced lunch students, so we do have a significant population of kids that don't have the means, and it always takes more, particularly when we have roughly 20% of our kids that are ESL, English as a second language kids. We have to provide services for that. So the answer is yes. Yes, it does have a burden on us. Other districts in the state are similar to us. They have demographics that are tough as well. But certainly Sioux City has its fair share of English language learners, of free and reduced lunch, of individual education plans, special ed. So all of those take money. All of those programs take money, and we're obliged by law to service those programs, whereas the private schools are not.